Alrighty, hopefully it works this time. Um, yeah, the first time I tried to record this, I hit the record button and my recording software just died and then didn't want to reload after I closed it. So yeah, hopefully this all goes well this time. It's looking good so far. So we're gonna do something a little different this time around. Funnily enough, this is actually the reason why I got off my ass and started making these videos. Um, Despite the fact that I haven't actually done one of these so far due to the growing mountain of witches boxes I have to look through. So so after my partner converted to Christianity from Buddhism, um, my life, which was already had lots of very interesting relationships with Christianity and Christians in person. Um, After she converted, that got even more interesting, which was fun. Um, yeah. So, and uh, so it, as you could probably imagine, there was a bit of how do I put this politely? Some clashes in terms of beliefs going on, and a pastor, my aunt's pastor, gave me this book. He said he said it was to what was his exact wording? To try and give me an understanding of marriage from a Christian perspective, which I thought was kind of funny hearing him say that because he knows my background reasonably well. He's met my parents, so he knows the very Christian upbringing I had, and the fact that I would know more about what marriage means as a Christian than my newly minted Christian partner would. So anyway, um, that's a thing. So he gave me the book, and I promised to read it, and I started reading it, and I had to stop. And so but I did promise him I would read it, and since I intend to keep that promise, this was the only way I could think of to actually force my way to actually push through it was by essentially sharing the experience, hopefully with potentially with other people. Otherwise, just the act of being able to whine and complain and vent in general about what's written in the book, um, just to help me, make my way through it. So I'm probably going to make this into a series. Um, yeah, so I'm probably going to make this into like its own series as I read through the whole book, and then I've got yeah, I was showered with Christian books. Um, yeah, as all the Christians in my life and a few new from her life decided this was the perfect opportunity to try and bring me back to the light. So I have a mountain of Christian books to read, so hopefully I will get to share that all with you. And then I'll start moving on to more fun stuff for me, hopefully. Um, so yeah, so welcome to. Oopsie, I'll stop trying to shake this. Um, Welcome to the first episode of A Witch Reads a Christian Book. Or A Witch Reads. So this will be A Witch Reads, and we're starting with a Christian book on marriage. Yay! This is going to be fun. Really, really fun. So please excuse the marked out section out there. This was and this was a secondhand book. Basically, the person who bought this book originally. I'm not going to show you the back because there's a name on there. Um, so the person who bought this book originally read it, obviously liked it, gave it to the pastor when they were done, and then he's passed on to me. So I've covered in marker, which I will rub out when I go to give this book back. And there's my marker. There. Christ, I forgot about that. All right. Shoot. um, uh, Maybe I'll whip out my editing software and take that out. God, I hate editing. Anyway, so a marriage after God's own heart. This is going to be fantastic. I have tried to do this before, but that was when my software decided I didn't actually need audio. So yeah, let's see how this goes. So I'm going to sort of read bits through it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Yeah, so here you go. Marriage, the impossible dream. So, a big chapter I had, big chapter, a big problem I had with this chapter um, was, I think the term he uses, false framing, where he sort of sets up this scenario and it's all doom and gloom. And then at the end, he's like, but this is how you can turn it all around, make everything just perfect and wonderful. And yeah, it irritated me slightly. It actually irritated me quite a lot. But here we go. So, no two people can make marriage work by themselves. That's quite a statement. Um, yeah, so that one there, that's quite saying something. I'm sure everyone here, anyone who listens to this will know at least one couple that seems to be doing all right. So that's we're getting off to a fantastic start here. So first the Impossible Dream title, and then that little section here. So you can probably get it. I imagine you can probably guess where this is going. So one time or another, every couple has a house guest, a relative, a friend, or someone you try to help. You and your spouse graciously decide to open your happy, comfortable home to this person for a brief stay. You are kind, you are caring, you are trying to meet a need. You are following the Bible's admonition to be hospitable. So here we see the framing bit coming on. So you're probably wondering what this has to do with marriage. Um, you are not alone. That was me too. So basically, the framing of this is going to be: you have a guest, and the guest starts to overstay their welcome, and yeah. Here we go. So, your experience as motel manager starts off pleasantly enough. Everybody is all smiled. You're helping a poor, dear, temporarily homeless person, and it gives you a warm feeling in your hearts. Your house guest is grateful, humble, considerate, and for the first few days, maybe even the first week, things are fine. Wonderful little narrative going here. Um, But if your house guest stays longer than a week, and most house guests do, it begins to wear on you. Your beautiful, idyllic bread and breakfast and lunch and dinner inn quickly becomes a house of horrors. Your schedule is thrown off, your carefully constructed routine is shot to pieces, you lose your personal space, you and your partner don't have time to talk, you realize that you have given control of your lives to an alien being, because apparently no one in this world can adult. Um, like your schedule's thrown off. Maybe a little bit, but you're adults. You can work around it. You have to work around schedule problems all the time. Um, your carefully constructed routine is shot to pieces. You're adults. Make a new one. Seriously, we've all had guests before. It's like, yes, like especially if they're visiting and you have to sort of take them around and entertain them. Like, yes, that's a pain in the ass, but as a house guest who's staying with you, typically, from my experience, like they do their thing, you do yours. So, as I said, like this is a bit of the framing going on. I mean, he's kind of over dramatizing how irritating it can be to have someone in your house. And yes, the welcome does wear out, and you start to have clashes and friction and stuff. But he's definitely overplaying this for the drama, and it's kind of irritating. So yeah, you lose your personal space. Yeah, fair enough. You and your partner don't have time to talk. There are coffee shops. Yes, some depending on where you live, you might not have them due to COVID, but most of us in the world have at least one coffee shop we know of that is open they can go to. So yeah. Anyway, all right. You find yourselves in the middle of a hostage crisis, and you and your spouse are the hostages. You peek out the window, but there's no SWAT team out to rescue you. No one is going to help you. You're all alone now, alone with your house guest. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, so this framing is driving me out the round. It's talking about like the person's or how person's always there. Can't drop your shoes in the middle of middle. You can't drop your shoes in the middle of the living room. Were you raised in a barn? Like, gah. You can't wander into the kitchen in your striped pajamas. Why not? There's why. I mean, if he had said in your underpants, fine. Yeah, that I can understand. But what's wrong with your striped pajamas? It suddenly dawns on you how stupid you looked in your striped pajamas. Like, so? It's your house. Anyway, there isn't enough hot water for your shower. Really? Um, okay. You can't sit in your favorite chair. Why not? You're an adult. Just that's your chair. Just make sure you claim it when they arrive. Your house guest has his selfish little hands on your television remote control. Well, in that case, that's a bad house guest. You probably shouldn't have that person there. Also, you're an adult. You can talk to them. It's your TV. It's your house. Come on. And what a surprise, he doesn't like your favorite TV shows. Who cares? It's your house. So this framing is, yeah. I mean, we are 2 pages in, and already it's yeah. Okay. So yeah, so you can see the framing here. He's talking about how bad it is to have a house guest. So yeah, you have to share the morning paper and you hate to share, so you read it first. Okay, I'm going to skip this. You become desperate for the person to go. You make X's on your wall calendar to count the days until your guest leaves. You begin giving him subtle hints that you want him to move on. You pack all his clothes and put the suitcase by the front door. You change the locks on your house. And you leave an anonymous note on his pillow with this message: if you don't leave by sundown tomorrow, something very bad will happen to you. This is not a joke. Obviously, this whole chapter is a joke, but still, it's like he's still playing on that whole framing narrative of how terrible and awful this whole thing is. And it might sound like I'm kind of overemphasizing this, but I've read the chapter, so I know where this is going, and you're about to find out. So, day finally comes when your house gets leave, blah 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 blah. When your certainty's gone, you and your spouse embrace passionately. Depends how long you've been married, and shout for joy. The war is over and you survived. And everything goes back to normal. So yeah. So all this, actually not even almost 2 pages, is just how awful it is to have this person invading your house. And it's massively overblown. And yeah, you probably think I'm overreacting a bit, but we're yeah. So here is the negative framing. Let's see how this spins around, shall we? different kind of house guest. You have probably lived through the chaos and inconvenience of hosting a house guest. Yes, according to this little preparatory section here, it is awful, horrible. How did we ever make it through the other side? With all of that horrible negative framing you've just put us through. So I'm not sure on the terminology, but basically he set up this very bad, not good scenario, just to like put us in this mind frame of oh, that's so terrible, and then it like if you have hosted a house guest, it brings back all the negative memories you had of having them in your house, and so suddenly everything is like, oh, that's right, it was so awful. Yeah. And so you come here, it's like, no matter how much you care for the visitor, there's a limit to how long someone can be around. Use your stuff and upset your team. I mean, fair statement, but in reference, like, this is all, reminding us, it's like, remember how bad this all was. As hard as it may be to believe, it doesn't have to be this way. There is one person you can invite into your home who will bring peace and joy and intimacy. Can you imagine having a house guest who will actually enhance your life and marriage? Can you see where this is going? Think about a guest who helps improve your communication. Wow. Creates openness and vulnerability. I hate his use of that word. Like, yes, being in a relationship, you do open yourself and expose yourself to, like, how do I put this? So when you're in a relationship, when you spend like near someone in close proximity for extended periods of times, they will see your best and your worst. They will see you like when you're sick, when you're healthy, when you're strong, when you're weak, like when you've had a bad day or something's happened and you are, emotionally vulnerable. Like that happens. But you don't, like, I know what he's trying to say, but you don't want to create vulnerability. The create openness bit that's fine. Create openness and probably maybe empathy may have been better. Like empathy with your spouse or partner. Vulnerability that drives me up the wall. Anyway, deepen your commitment to each other. Protect you from Satan's attacks. Wow, I wonder who he's talking about. Wow, but anyway, so this house guest sounds amazing. Oh, where do I sign up? There is such a house guest, as you have probably guessed. No, really. I'm referring to Jesus Christ. Okay, so let's read and find out how amazing it is to have this third person in your marriage, to have your couple turn into a menage a trois, shall we say. When he comes to stay at your house, he removes burdens instead of creating them and makes you feel free, not trapped. As long as both of you are Christian, but that's neither here nor there. Um, as for removing burdens, I I know the Bible fairly well, and I would very dearly like him to point me to the passage where it says that Jesus Christ removes burdens. There are quite a few statements saying he makes them lighter. He will help you carry to bear the load. But yeah, yeah. So off to a fantastic start so far. Over the past 15 years as a psychologist and speaker specializing in family issues, I have talked with hundreds of couples every year. I mean, maybe. Very possibly. I mean, 15 years, yeah. both in my office and at my marriage seminars. So, I mean, he's probably talked to hundreds, maybe 1,000, depending on how big they are, but talked with? Okay, never mind. I'm getting onto, semantics here. Many of these couples try to make their marriages work by themselves. Just the two of them in their own power. How could they marriage without all of this? Yeah, I'm kind of a bit. You may have gathered that the previous chapter and all of this framing has rubbed me the wrong way. So it's yeah. We've had now we've had this little bit where it says house guests are so terrible. Can you imagine? There's such an amazing guest who just makes all your life so beautiful and wonderful and amazing. Can't you just wait to bring him into your life? And you probably think I'm still being dramatic. Just wait, we're getting there. I say to them, look, let's face reality. You can't do it on your own. You need help. Supernatural help. Well, I'm sure a few of the wives wouldn't mind having old Dean and what's his name? Crap, I can't remember the show. Uh, Damn it, whatever. Having the two brothers help, I'm sure a few of them wouldn't mind. You need Jesus Christ to be a permanent residence in your house, not just an occasional visitor. Actually, I personally would mind if he wasn't there at all. And I need to go because it sounds like someone's at my gate. All right, that was silly of me. So there wasn't anyone at the gate, and I should have hit pause rather than stop. I'm definitely gonna have to get that editing software out. Super exciting. All right, so yeah, so Jesus Christ as a permanent resident. Ooh, thank you. Anyway, so as a Christian, yeah, that's. I mean, as I said, he's probably, well, probably he's definitely overblowing this, in my very humble opinion. Like massively overblowing this. I mean, yes, religion is important, and sharing spirituality with a partner excuse me, is very much. I wouldn't say essential. You don't have to, especially, I mean, obviously, if you don't share religions, then you you wouldn't be sharing much spirituality. Depending, depends how mature you are about it. But like the spiritual aspect of your life and of your partner's life and their roles in your lives and your relationship can like it. I wouldn't say it cannot be overstated, but it's probably something that is ignored quite a lot by a lot of people, um, and of which Christians are no exception. Like I've heard recently, been hearing the phrase Sunday Christians. So people who really are only Christian on Sundays, they go to church, they do their thing, and then they don't really think about it. I mean, they might maybe even pray before meals, but like humans are spiritual creatures. We are religious creatures. Religion has in our blood, uh, in the way it's wired into us, and like the sort of research, the scientific findings on this fairly are fairly convincing. I think that said, I am a little biased. So to have spirituality, religion in your life, in your world, is a good thing. I think whether like some sort of religion or belief system. I should probably clarify that to include that because um, like your belief system doesn't have to be religious per se. There are plenty of belief systems out there you can follow and get strength from, and that's something you and your partner can share. Something beyond the two of you, that beyond like the physical intimacy and um, your friendship and whatever sort of mental connections you might have. So they must be doing work outside anyway. Um, so beyond any sort of mental connections, like it's shared interests and things you typically talk about. Um, like to have something beyond just you that helps bind you together is definitely something I think the modern Western world is lacking somewhat in. And I'm probably sounding very conservative here for the what's typically the liberal left leaning uh, pagan or Wiccan witchcraft typical mindset. So, but anyway, that's probably has a lot to do with my upbringing. So yeah, so let's go on. Is your marriage average or awesome? Actually, yeah, we'll go with this. On a recent Sunday morning, I had just finished speaking on the importance of putting Jesus Christ at the center of marriage relationships. Yeah, yeah, I think this is very much a Christian thing. Like they definitely can have get this thing going of like everything centers around their religion rather it being having a place in your life. So yeah, um, so yeah, I think that's like a like Christian culture thing. So anyway, after the worship service, I stayed at the front of the auditorium, and 10 or 12 couples came up to talk with me. Two of those couples stand out in my mind. All four spouses knew Jesus Christ personally. Both couples attended church faithfully. Both couples had been married about the same length of time. But that is when the similarities ended. The contrast between the two marriages were startling and revealing. So the first couple told me that God had blessed them with many gifts, blah, 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 jobs, home, kids. Um, but they told me sadly they weren't really happy in their relationship. Oh, their marriage. They still loved each other, but there was no passion or excitement anymore. Blah, 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 blah. So they'd fallen into a rut that basically happens to virtually every marriage ever. So the second couple approached me, and before they opened their mouths, I knew something was different about me. They held hands, they smiled at each other, their eyes sparkled, they exuded an energy that was hard to describe. They told me that up to a year and a half ago, their marriage had been pretty boring. So, normal marriage. Um, Then they faced some painful events. So they faced some painful events and turned to Jesus for help. And so basically, they sort of fell on the supernatural force in their life that the belief system beyond them to give them the strength and the courage to move on, which is what religion is good for. And so they did all this stuff, and most were reconnected to him as a couple. He got them through their crisis, and they continued to include him in their relationship. They told me Jesus had transformed their average marriage into an awesome one. Yay! They'd gone from blah blah normal, normal, normal. They'd gone from a tedious treadmill of relationship to an exciting, unpredictable adventure. Um, um, Unpredictable. I'm not sure how much. I'm not sure how much that you really want that in your life, but this next bit sort of interesting. They were growing together spiritually, which that's as a couple things. So I'm not just going to rip this book apart. I'm more than happy to point out the bits where um where it has useful advice, things that can be used in like everyday life for me, for just people in general, and I imagine for Christians specifically. So growing together spiritually, that is definitely something that is ignored as I said before, in the Western world. Like spirituality has, as when the Western society has grown more and more material, spirituality has very much fallen on the wayside. And and I think we're like I can I feel this is sort of to blame for like maybe not so much the Enlightenment, but perhaps there, where science really started, where the separation, basically, where the separation between alchemy and science, so the spiritual side of alchemy came to one side, and then these purely physical aspects of alchemy went to the other, and we ended up with the sciences as we understand them today. Whereas for most of human history, science and magic were basically the same time, and in separating science and in the separation from alchemy into science, into like the physical sciences and the more sort of spiritual alchemy, which maybe I'll get into someday. Uh, they've they sort of, when they did that, they ruled the physical sciences as this is what the world, the universe is, and they took all the mystery, all of the magic, all of the spirituality and the supernatural out of the world, out of our lives. And that's not the way we're wired. Religion has been a huge part of human existence since forever. Like there are cave paintings of definitely mythical creatures. Like I have a book that has a picture of a cave painting of a man, someone with like the torso and head of a man, antlers and like deer legs, kind of like a fawn, but not quite a fawn or a satyr, but not quite. Um, and and that cave painting is like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years old, probably hundreds of thousands. So, like this sort of like spirituality myth is hardwired into us. It has been a part of our world for generations. I mean, the oldest civic building known that I know of is, I believe it's in Turkey or Iran or somewhere around there, and it is a temple. As far as we can tell, like there wasn't even writing back then. But there was a civic building that, as far as they think, from what they can see, was a temple used to perform sky burials. So basically, when you like, I think it was at the top of the hill or something, and you leave the body out there exposed to the elements, and it gets picked clean by birds, and decomposition happens, and then I think they take the skeleton and bury it. I'm not sure, but basically sky burial, like is it gets left to the elements, and like this was done by what they suspect was hunter-gatherer tribes. Like they suspect that there was like a small full-time priesthood that stayed at the temple and were provided resources by the various tribes that would come through to have their dead buried. So the oldest the oldest civic building we know of, about 13,000 years old, I think it is, or 11,000, something like that, is a temple. So to that's how important spirituality is to us as human beings. And the fact that we have now gone and taken it straight out of our lives and like we've replaced it with, well, I mean, technically we've replaced it with materialism, but really what we've replaced it with is nothing. That we've left that part of our lives empty. And you can see its effect in the moral decay of the Western world. I mean, just look at all the nonsense happening in America right now. So yeah, so this growing together spiritually, I mean, this is definitely something that the Western world needs to do, no matter what your religion, whether you're Buddhist or Christian or pagan or Muslim, whatever. Like this growing together spiritually, like as a person, as a couple, as a family, as a culture, is as a country, is something like, even if we don't share the same beliefs, it's something we need to do. Like Yeah, it's makes me think of back in the days when, religious philosophy and thinking were so key. I mean, you might not, most people probably don't realize it, but are following the collapse, not the collapse, but the hard times that fell on the medieval world at the end of I think it was the end of the late medieval period, when Christianity was on a downward spiral, going down, the Islamic world was experienced what they call the golden age of Islam, and it saw like founding of universities and intellectual thought both in sciences and philosophy, and it had hosts to like Jewish, Christian, and Muslim scholars who are all there studying and developing their own fields. So like even in big empires, like that growing together spiritually is so key, and it's something we've just all forgotten. Well, not all of us, but as a culture, as a society. So anyway, so go along serving Jesus as a team and making a difference in the world. Uh, I do want to keep going with this. I don't want to keep getting distracted, but like, there's a few people that I've listened to who say that if you want to make a difference in the world, you have to start with yourself. You have to start being the change. You can't, if things at home aren't up to scratch, who are you and how are you supposed to make change for the better in the world if you can't make your own home better? So yeah, so you have to be the change you want, like live it, be an example to other people, and then act through yourself into the world. So you, instead of acting top down as most people like try to do or think should be done, you need to work bottom from the ground up and let the changes sort of rise up through society. Um, I mean, yeah, that might sound like hard work and not terribly effective, but that is something that we as average people can do, like just in the way we live our lives. So, yeah. So, along the way, they had developed a much deeper level of spiritual, emotional, and sexual intimacy. Well, yes. I mean, if you take that effort to, that sort of spiritual binding thing, like if you, because I once had it described to me, like, well, as I was at a funny little seminar thing, was when you meet your future spouse, you connect with them mentally, so you get to know them, you like what you see, you connect with them hopefully or preferably spiritually, so you share beliefs, morals, values, and well, starting with like morals, values, preferably beliefs, but if you have a high degree of emotional intelligence and maturity, you can work around that. So you connect with them mentally, preferably spiritually, and he said then intimately, or physically. And he then went, he threw marriage between, he went mentally, spiritually, marriage, like mental connection, spiritual connection, marriage, physical connection. And I remember thinking to myself, one of those sounds like the odd one out. But anyway, so yeah, and I that is something I do agree with. Um, but yeah, so but as I was saying before, so you connect with someone on a mental level, and but I mean you would do that with all of your anyone you consider a friend. That should be the norm for all of that. So what makes some of these things different is with this you have your friendship, your relationship with your partner, but you're using that sort of outside spiritual binding force that is your shared belief system to sort of pull you together, to sort of bring you closer, to unite to basically to unite you in a goal, because as human beings we are goal driven creatures. And so if we do not have a sort of outside shared goal, it does become different. And that's probably what you'll find goes wrong in a lot of relationships, is they don't have that sort of shared binding together. So yeah. So all right. So let me ask you, what kind of marriage do you want to have? The lackluster one, or the kind many, perhaps most couple. What? So the lackluster one, Like, not awful, but whatever. Or do you want an intimate, fulfilling connection like the second couple? Um, so yeah, so he's like, obviously we all want to have vibrant relationships with our spouses. So yeah, and he said, the truth is you can experience this kind of closeness most spouses only dream about, and the only way to get this kind of vibrant, exceptional marriage is through Jesus Christ. I'd like to take this opportunity to point out that people have been getting married for thousands of years. So somehow I doubt that the key to a vibrant marriage is through a religion that has only existed for about 2,000 years. And not everywhere in the world either. I'm pretty sure there are marriages that work fine, work well, all over the world from different belief systems. So, yeah. So, yeah, picture yourselves bringing Jesus into your home. He'll be more than a house guest, he'll become a permanent addition to your marriage. He'll be the third member of your relationship. When Jesus is involved, three isn't a crowd, three is just right. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Bible or Christian endorsement for menage a trois. Run that one past your spouses, guys. Um, and when you have Jesus Christ with you, you also have God the Father and the Holy Spirit. It's a package deal. This relationship is starting to sound really crowded. Um, yeah, so you can have all the power, guidance, and love of the Godhead in your marriage. God wants you to have it. He's waiting for you to invite him into your home. I would very much like him to leave. The presence of God through his son Jesus Christ is what every marriage needs. Uh, Actually, mine kind of needs a lot less. But anyway, if you let him, God will give you the relationship you always longed for. Yours can become a marriage after God's own heart. Title drop, everyone. Um, so basically, it talks about how all the how having God in your life will bring your marriage back together. And I mean, as I said, like getting a more spiritually intimate relationship will do this no matter what your religion is. Obviously, he's doing this from a Christian perspective because this is all Christian framing. Oh, because he's Christian. So, yeah. And I think I've missed a bit. I remember having a massive go on something before. But anyway, yeah, all right. So I'm going to just keep going with that. So, yeah, so like yeah, growing in spiritual intimacy, I'm just going to try not to beat on this too much. Like that is, as it's an outside force that binds you together rather than trying to do it all yourself. So it gives us as goal-orientated creatures something to work towards, something to bind us, something where after the kids go to bed, you can sit down and you can talk about it. It gives you something to talk about, something to bond with over that isn't part of just everyday life. Because for people like me, and hopefully some of you watching will know this, like once you've got a job and kids and all that, like you meet up with a friend and like, so how was your weekend? It was fine. We did housework, looked after the kids, maybe kids at a party, or took the kids to the park. Like nothing exciting or interesting happens anymore. So it does become very difficult to have something you can bond with your spouse over and sit down and talk about. Whereas if you have this sort of outside goal you're both working towards that is both important to you, it does give you something for you to sit down and talk about and discuss. Um, like this is something my parents do. They're both very strong Christians. They both study it quite a lot, and so although they obviously take different approaches, being like male and female and having different interests and such, but it is something they bond with and bond over. Like they can talk about it and they discuss it and they do things with it together. So So it is definitely an outside force, an outside goal that is actively discouraged. Like Western society seems to actively discourage doing this because it's seen as superstitious and nonsense and all that out of ignorance. So yeah. All right. So next little bit reality check. I've got good news and bad news about marriage. Let's start with the bad news. Of course we are, because we need that negative framing to go see how awesome you could be if, or awesome it could be if you just have Jesus in your life. Wow, amazing, so wonderful. Anyway, so the whole idea of marriage is insane. I agree. It makes no sense. Oh yes. Marriage expects two people to live together in harmony and intimacy. But the two people are different sexually. Yes, different physically. Yes, despite what some people might try and tell you. Different hormonally. Yes, different intellectually. Different in brain construction and chemistry. I'm pretty sure that falls under physically, but anyway, different in emotional expression, different in personality, and different in family background. So yeah, and that's all valid. We are. So it's marriage is definitely, yeah, it's insane. It makes no sense, and yet we seem to do it anyway. To top it all off, both are selfish. This is nothing less than a recipe for disaster. Apparently, 50% divorce rate in America. So yeah, in fact, I'm surprised it isn't higher when you consider the enormous challenges of marriage and the enormous differences between men and women. So yeah, and that, yeah, I mean, anyone who's lived with someone for an extended period of time knows that, conflict management and, that sort of shared uniting force, like whatever it might be that keeps you together. I mean, you need to have something and you need to be able to discuss your relationship as adults to get it to work. But yeah, marriage is the one human relationship with the greatest potential for conflict. Yeah, because you live with each other every day, and the more time you spend with each other, the more the more how do I put this? So the more time you spend around someone, the more obvious the differences become, and the more the points of friction will meet. And yeah, trying to do this without making a sort of science reference is that like the points of friction will well, when rubbed together will heat up and more likely to start a flame. To try and put it simply. So yeah, the husband won't talk, the wife won't stop talking. Well, yeah, that's the way we're wired. I believe it is. Men typically say, was it 2,000 to 5,000 words? Women will say like 12 to 15. So yeah, he can't remember anything that happened more than 10 minutes ago because it wasn't important. Therefore, we don't care. She remembers everything that ever happened to her. So this actually, if anyone's interested, is actually um, related to the way we think and the way we work. So men typically, I'm not okay. So I'm going to preface this. So I'll say it first and then I'll clarify. So men typically think more logically, women typically think more emotionally. And before this gets too much rage, let me explain. So men are problem orientated. They think there is problem, find solution. Whereas women will experience something and their thought process is based on how does this make me feel. So something happens, makes me feel bad. How do I stop feeling bad? That's usually how they deal with deal with their problems and how they think. And I'm not saying women can't be logical, and I'm not saying men aren't emotional. I'm just saying men tend to be sort of problem orientated. Women tend to think more on the terms of how does this make me feel. And the reason why this is important for this is typically memory is tied to emotions. We're more likely to remember something that created a strong emotional response in us than something that didn't. This is in terms of event. Like information is slightly different. But yeah, so in terms of an event that happens to us, it's typically the emotional response that we have that will decide whether or not the memory sticks. And because women think more in terms of emotion and how things make them feel, they are more likely to remember events and things that happen to them than men are, because men typically do not attach emotions to events. I mean, you have a flat tire. A man will go, "Oh no, tire's flat, problem. So, solution, change tire." How do you make it feel? Yeah, you might be a little irritated, but nothing big deal. Woman has a flat tire. Oh no, this is terrible. You know, emotion, emotion, emotion. And then they'll get the tire, or they'll get someone to help them change the tire, and now how does that make them feel? That feels great. Yeah. So because they will feel the situation more than the man will, because to the man it's just a problem, they are more likely to remember that one time they had a flat tire and then stuck on the side of the motorway in wherever. Whereas a man, yeah, like I can, I know I've changed more than a few tires in my time, and the only one that really sticks out to me is the time when I had to change a friend's tire at like 2 or 3 a.m. And this was the third time I changed her tire. And I told her, I was like, haven't you learned by now? She was like, yeah, but I could just get you to do it for me. So, as an example, that had an emotional attachment because it was late, it was irritating, and it was like the third time I'd done it for her. So, anyway, so she remembers everything that ever happened to her. And he gives an example of being born, and you can definitely see the emotional imprint there. But yeah, he goes into absolutely massive detail, and also giving birth won't work because that's not how memory works. Incidentally, our memory works through language, and so the reason why you don't remember like your very earliest years is because you don't, like, before you learn language, you have no real way to organize and to sort of set those memories. So yeah, anyway. So even if the husband could just remember his birth, he wouldn't want to talk about it. The wife wants to describe in excruciating detail every event of her day, and she wants her husband to show interest in her monologue. So, and this comes back to the way, like, a massive problem between couples is how they deal with issues in their life, and this is something that causes a lot of problems in a lot of things. Is because a woman will have an issue in her life, and she will come and talk to her husband and wax on about whatever happened to her in her day, and they're thinking about this in two different ways. So the man will hear the wife talking, and he will think in the way he thinks, which I've explained before, problem. So to him, to his man brain, his partner, someone he cares about, is coming to him with a problem. And so he will do the man thing and try and think of a solution and try and provide her with solutions. The woman isn't interested in solutions. She is thinking emotionally. She wants her husband to typically to validate her emotions. Go, oh no, that was so terrible. How could they do that? Etc. 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 I once read a fantastic piece of advice for dealing with this. In that, if a woman, like to a woman, saying, if you want someone to validate your emotion or something happen, call your girlfriends. Don't talk to your husband. It's not going to work. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So she will spend 45 minutes talking about an event that lasts only 5 minutes, and the husband will sum up his entire day with just one word: okay, or fine, or good. Yeah, because Nothing particularly noteworthy happened. We made problems. We solved problems. The end. So yeah, he's a logical black and white thinker, as I talked about before, who keeps his emotions buried inside. Men typically also aren't as emotional as women are, but yeah. Anyway, she's sensitive, touchy-feely souls who shares her emotions easily and spontaneously. We talked about this before. That's the difference between men and women think. He didn't cry when his 15-year-old dog died. Depends on the dog. She cries when she sees a dead squirrel, one she didn't even know, on the road. Uh, yeah, I can kind of see that. She's happy having sex once a week. God, I wish I had that marriage. He'd like sex 4 times a week. Um, so, all right. So another little bit of mis- misunderstanding between the sexes. So men, like women, have a hormonal cycle, and it's involved with sex. So a man's like sexual cycle is usually between 48 to 72 hours. So if he has sex 48 to 72 hours later, he wants more sex. That's typically the way it goes. You do get exceptions. Um, some men more, some men less, and that's typically the way it's 42 to 78 hours. So a man, like if he for him to be sexually satisfied, it would be not just sex like once a month or once a week. It's typically roughly every 48 to 72 hours. So yeah, she wants to snuggle and cuddle. He wants sex. That's not true. Depending on like, there's a book you should read if you're interested in this sort of stuff. It's called The Five Languages of Love. Um, and there it talks about how people express the way they feel affection for partners differently. So to snuggle and cuddle, I mean that would be touch. And just because like you get men whose language of love is touch, that I am one of them. So I'm more than happy to snuggle, hold hands, go for hugs, all of that. But the reason why it sounds like this, she wants to snuggle and cuddle, he wants sex, is probably because like if you give him like the sex that fits into his cycle. So I'm pretty sure if memory serves, it's been a while. I fall into the 72-hour cycle. Um, Pretty much exactly. I'm like at the end of the average. And I think most men are, but that's not, yeah. Anyway, so if he has regular sex, he won't feel the need for sex. Like if he's getting regular sex, it isn't that big a drive for him. And that's something I think a lot of women don't understand because they don't think about sex the same way we do. Sex is a big driving force in a man's life. And so, yeah, but if to any woman who do hear this, if you give him regular sex, and obviously you don't just give it to him, he needs to do work too. But if a man has, like, if his sex drive or desire, whatever you want to call it, is filled, then he will be more likely to snuggle and cuddle. This framing is something of a misconception because people or most women don't understand how sex works for men. So yeah, she wants to have a deep personal conversation. He wants the same thing as above. That is not true. This is a bit of so something he does a lot in this book that you may have already noticed by the fact it's driving me up the damn wall is he tends to sort of go from extremes, um, like to get as a way to sort of emphasize like this is so bad. This is how you make it amazing, and it's driving me up the wall. But yeah, anyway, so she wants to have a deep personal conversation. Men typically are more than happy to have deep conversations, though typically personal conversations with partners I find tend to be somewhat different because men and women deal with things in their life differently. Like for me, I have my best friend. So typically any problems I have, I will talk to him about. I will not talk to my partner because I know it's not going to work. And I would hope that she would do the same, and or that the female would do the same, because you talk to a woman because they understand you, the way your brain works. So I'm more than okay. So to go back to so I'm more than happy to have like deep, personal, interesting conversations, and you're more likely to have him think that way if he's not wanting sex. So if you are prepared to work on the if you're prepared to work on the your intimate life to negotiate and both like he you both put the work in, if he's prepared to do the stuff for you, that you are then prepared to give him like physical intimacy in a way that fits his routine, then you are more likely to have a partner who is like who's not then distracted by his hormonal drive for sex. And therefore, you are more likely to have a more fulfilling relationship, and he is more likely to be more happy in his relationship because he's not having that nagging feeling in the back of his head all the time, because that's the way we're wired. And if you don't like it, like in a woman, if you don't like it that way, then the only way to really fix that is to go lesbian. I mean, all men are like that, whether you like it or not. Like it's a give and take that is a part of relationships, and it's something we all have to put up with. Anyway, she wants romantic, subtle build up to sex. His idea of subtle build up sex, picture on the bottom, is saying, "How about it, babe?" As I said, if he's not like having to sort of live with that constant urge, he's not going to be as pressured. If he knows that, like, if he is sexually satisfied and you have that sort of system that how do I put this, that intimacy built into the relationship where like he's not worried about when or how he's going to get it, he's not constantly being driven by it, you are more likely to get a romantic subtle build-up because he's more prepared to put the effort in, and he's more prepared to get payoff for it. Like, if he's not sure if and when he's going to get it next, he's going to try and go for it straight away. Whereas if he's not worried about that, if he is like in a position where like the cycle comes around and it's time for sex, and he knows he's not going to have to fight for it or worry about it or nag her or any of that, he's more likely to put that sort of effort in. So, as I've said before, he needs to be prepared to put the effort in, but by the same token, woman, if any of your listeners, for the love of all things holy, you need to be prepared to do the work too. If you want this, you need to work for it as well. If you make him do all the work, you're not going to get the payback. You're not going to get any payoff. And why should you? Because you're not doing the work. So, yeah, moving on. He likes movies with plenty of gunfights, explosions, bodies in the streets, high-tech special effects, blah, 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 blah. Oh, God. All right, this framing. All right, so yes, so first thing I'd like to make, first comment I'd like to make about this. Like, he likes movies with gunfight explosions, blah, 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 blah. Woman, next time you get dragged to see a movie your beloved wants to see, look to see if there is some sort of romantic subplot going on there. And I can guarantee the answer will be yes. In virtually all movies for men, there is some, and I'm going to let you know, it's probably not for your benefit. Like, it might be there to help ease your thing, but there is reasons why it's there. Women say men are not romantic. That is not true. We just do it differently. Rom-coms will drive us up the wall because that's not how we see it. Also, they're ridiculous. But every act, like virtually every action movie. I mean, the movie 300, um, which was a movie about half naked guys stabbing a bunch of other guys, had the story of King Leonidas and his wife, like his emotions for his wife, even though you barely see her for. Well, you do, like, she has her own plot, but like there is the romance. It's not even really a subplot, that the romance. I mean, she does her bit, he does his. Which there she is. The new Mortal Kombat movie. Um, it's it's a movie for the fans. So it's a movie aimed at guys with all the blood and gore and fighting scenes and special effects. And there is the main character, I'm not going to talk about, but anyway, he has a wife and a daughter, and it talks about, like, part of the theme is the lengths he will go to protect and save them. So So this bit here is not correct, and I really, really wish people, because in this way it shows he really doesn't understand the people he's talking to. Okay, like, as I said, the Mortal Kombat movie is the main focus character. It's talking about the lengths he will go to protect and save his family. Like, that is a sort of emotional and like romantic, sort of thing that men will get behind. So yeah, so just keep this in mind when we talk about the rest of the thing. His movies don't contain much in the way of sophisticated conversations. Ooh. I would like to take this opportunity to point out one of my favorite movies is V for Vendetta. And the speech that V gives after he takes over the television station is brilliant. Brilliant. So this little bit here is full of so much nonsense. It was driving me up the wall. Anyway, so I'm gonna try not to talk about this for more than an hour, but so let's, or at least maybe I'll probably cut this off at the end of this chapter. But anyway, most dialogue goes like this: "I'm going to kill you, sucker." Whatever. She prefers movies filled with romance, relationships, and people talking about romance and relationships. That's a fair point. Women are, emotional. They like the romance stuff. Yeah, she doesn't like to see movie characters die violent deaths for no good reason. I can think of plenty of good reasons why people die in men's movies. But anyway, that it's okay if someone dies after long illness and has spent 2 hours. Yeah, okay. So he's definitely, as I've complained about many, 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 many times so far in this, he's definitely playing the game of extremes, and it's irritating me because something, if you're prepared to pay attention to the world around you, that's typically not how the world works. Like, the world, and I tend to find Christians tend to think this way, they tend to see the world in black and white, not even shades of gray, black and white. Whereas the reality is there's a lot more, the world is technicolor. There's a lot more nuance, it's a lot more complicated. Like, even if you're prepared to look at the philosophy and thinking behind Christianity, which is another little book series I'm gonna it's only a like 66 volume series that I want to get through. Um, which the world is complicated. Christianity is complicated. There's a reason why there are so many different types and so many different ways of practicing. So this thing of extremes it's false. It's ludicrous. It is frustratingly ludicrous, and I wish he would stop. So anyway, um, she's watched the 6 volume set of Pride and Prejudice. Blah 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 blah. As I said, on your own, marriage is impossible. Right. That's the most important truth about marriage. It's not just really, really difficult. It is not just a tremendous challenge, it's impossible. Marriage is a never-ending series of conflicts, misunderstandings, and mind-boggling misconnections. I still have a bit of time before I know. We might get through this. Okay, marriage is not impossible. We've been doing it for a long time. It's just really hard. And we need to deal with it with a degree of, emotional maturity and mental maturity and stuff. We need to put the effort in. And never-ending series of conflicts, misunderstandings, and mind-boggling misconnections. I like a little phrase I heard once upon a time is, how did we put men on the moon? One problem at a time. Because if you hear the stories about what it took to put men on the moon, like from the moment the rocket takes off, those astronauts are solving problems. Like, this is going wrong. How do we fix it? That and then, there's a whole list for, and you need to the moment it takes off. There's a whole bunch of problems, and they need to prioritize each problem into how severe each one is, and then solve one problem at a time. Well, sometimes more than one, but you get what I mean. So yeah, why are we so different? Why did God make men and women so unbelievably different? The main reason is so that we would have to depend on Him. No, that's patently false, but no. Like, why are we different? Because we serve different roles in the family, in a family. So, two parents with children. In the culture, like in the tribe, in the small group, in the broader society, we fulfill different roles. Um, like you hear the typical sort of stereotype of the man goes out and work, the woman looks after the home. That's not wrong. So in the early days, the men would go out and hunt, whereas the woman would, typically go out and gather. And the woman would also be more responsible for looking after children, although men have a role to play with that. Um, I mean, okay, so we have different roles in raising children. We have different roles in maintaining a household, and we have different roles in how we provide to the society and the culture we live in. So, and like it's that's just the way it's worked out. So, men deal with some things, women deals with the other things, and between the two of it, we have hopefully a functioning society, a functioning family, and a functioning, parent, children, whatever you want to call it. So yeah. God wants to be the center of every marriage. The Christian God wants to be the center of everything. So He made the relationship difficult. This framing is driving me up the wall. Made it difficult, so we have to keep Him there to make it work. Because Christians love having God solve all of their damn problems. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's just like God, isn't it? Yes, I'm glad we agree on this. He makes sure that He is the answer to all of life's problems. Well, He certainly likes to think so. And as I've said before, we've been doing marriage for a long time, and Christianity is only 2,000 years old and not universal. Marriage has been done through other cultures, in other belief systems, for thousands of years. So, yeah, without God's presence and power, there isn't a couple alive that can build a truly intimate, deep love. If we listen to you, then yes, I could see why you would have that thing. But if you actually live in the real world, you will know that it's a bit more nuanced than that. Well, it's just patently false and ridiculous, just utterly. I mean, yes, as I've said, having that sort of spiritual binding that holds the relationship together is important. It helps. So Yeah, but that statement. Oh boy. Oh, you can stay together and limp along without God. Lots of couples, Christians and non-Christians, do that. You might be a decent marriage, a stable marriage, no one's going to leave, you're staying together, but not because you're passionately in love, but out of obligation, because the right thing to do because because you have children or you don't want to break up time. So, as I sort of keep harping on about, you don't need to be Christian to have a good marriage. I'm sure everyone knows, like, I'm sure you can think of at least one Christian, not non-Christian couple that has a good marriage. Maybe, and if you're lucky, anyone, like not just Christian, but anyone who has a great one. But that phrase, oh my God, or goddess rather. But of course, staying together is the right thing for couples to do, but it's not the right thing to stay together like that. If you do, you're settling far less than what God wants for your marriage. Well, it should be what's far less than what you should want for your marriage, but anyway. That kind of grinded, yeah, whatever. I asked the limp along couple same question: how's your marriage going? You get all the different things. Like, yeah, could be worse, whatever. That is the kind of that's the kind you get when you exclude God from your day-to-day life as a couple. As it, like, if you really want good advice, like decent advice, you just as a goal beyond yourselves for the two of you to work towards. Like whether it's buying a house, like setting up yourselves to have children. I mean, something that you can sit down, work towards, that binds you together, that is not just day-to-day survival. So yeah, now for the good news. Marriage is the one human relationship with the greatest potential for intimacy. Oh yeah, kids will give that a very good run for their money. Even with all our differences, marriages can work beautifully if we're prepared to work at it and have a goal that binds us together, which in this case he refers to as God. But anyway, God wants marriage to be glorious, passionate, da ba 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 da whatever. He wants it to be great. Do you want to read the most beautiful, moving description of love ever written? You better be sitting down when you read this passage from Scripture because it might knock you off your feet. Okay. All right, so here's the passage. Put me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death, jealousy as severe as Sheol. I'm not sure what that is. Its flashes are the flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters, so a lot of water, cannot quench love, nor will rivers overflow it. If a man were to give all the riches of his house for love, it would be utterly despised. Strange end of a way to end that, but yeah. Okay, so that's very poetic description of love. So love is a fire, an eternal flame that oceans of water cannot extinguish. So yeah, that's a fairly reasonable poetic description of love. And how big is this one? Okay, we're almost done, so I should be able to get this in probably in just over an hour. All of this raises a big question. How do you get there? How do you bring Jesus, God, and Holy Spirit, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to show you how in the following chapters. So, importance of spiritual intimacy. Physical and emotional intimacy are important, but there's not enough. Spiritual intimacy is what you must have to achieve God's best. Right. So, as I've spoken about this quite a lot already, spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, so mental connection. He misses that one, and spiritual, like the spiritual intimacy, spiritual connection, are important. Covering the 5 major benefits of spiritual intimacy in marriage: an exhilarating ride for 2. Okay. Great sex. Okay. Deep communication. protection from marriage killers, and a bottomless reservoir of fuel for your marriage journey. So those are some big claims, and I look forward to to getting into them. This should be fun. So part three, get down to the nitty gritty, practical step by step fashion how to cultivate presence of God as a couple by consistently bringing God into 7 critical areas of relationship: prayer, Bible reading, spiritual conversations, worship, economy, so blah 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 blah. Part four, I describe the major barriers to spiritual intimacy and overcome them. Present 10 ways to motivate your mate to spiritually bond and challenge the 6 main excuses people use to avoid spiritual intimacy. So, okay, so this sounds good. As I said, this chapter has not really endeared me with a great deal of faith in this book, and the fact that we still have a few more pages to go before I actually get there, before I get to the part where I could not keep going anymore, is so yeah. So great in theory. Let's hope we can get something decent out of this. But he makes a big promise. So when you finish this book, you'll know how to spiritually bond as a man and a woman. So yeah, so lots of big promises, but that chapter, the whole sort of positive and negative, like the sort of extremes in framing are, yeah. As I said, I reached a bit where I couldn't keep going. So, and we still have yet to get there. So, yeah, lots of big promises. I do want to try and as I keep going off in tangents, I do want to try and make this so that we get something out of this. But mainly, this is probably just going to be me ranting about the absolute stupidity and ridiculousness that is this book. So I hope you enjoy. This is going to be looks like it's going to be a wild ride. That is so. The introduction down. Uh, so yeah, so that is that one down. 10 pages took us an hour. Fortunately, the next chapter is only 6 pages, but did I? I did make it. I did actually make it to that one. So we have at least one chapter before I start totally losing my mind. At least. So yeah. So let's see how this goes. This should be fun.